Let's be honest for a second. If you grew up in the late 90s or early 2000s, there's a pretty good chance South Park helped shape your entire sense of humor. Four foul-mouthed kids from a tiny Colorado mountain town somehow became the most dangerous voices on television, and for a long time, they were completely untouchable. But something changed, and depending on who you ask, the show either lost its mind or lost its nerve. Today, we're going to talk about how South Park went from being the most fearless show on TV to a cultural flashpoint that people can't quite agree on anymore. This is the rise and fall of South Park. When South Park first aired in August 1997, nobody really knew what to do with it. The animation looked like it was made by two guys with a stack of construction paper, which it basically was, and the humor was so far over the line that the line basically ceased to exist. In the very first episode, Kenny dies, just like that.
Oh my God! They killed Kenny! You bastard!
Matter of fact, no big dramatic moment, he just dies and everybody moves on. That one joke alone told you everything you needed to know about what this show was going to be. What made Trey Parker and Matt Stone genuinely special in those early years was the speed. They could write, produce, and air an episode in about 6 days, which meant they were reacting to real-world events in real time. While other shows were still in development meetings, South Park was already done making fun of whatever disaster or scandal had just exploded in the news. That kind of immediacy was completely unheard of in animation, and it basically gave the show this electric quality like anything could happen at any moment because it basically could. And they really did go after everyone. Politicians, celebrities, religious figures, corporations, scientists, you name it. Nobody got a free pass. The Scientology episode, Trapped in the Closet, is probably the most famous example of this, where they essentially called the entire religion a scam on national television. Tom Cruise allegedly threatened to pull his promotional work for Mission Impossible 3 unless Comedy Central pulled the episode. And you know what? Comedy Central actually pulled it. But the fact that Parker and Stone made it in the first place, that was the whole point. They were saying the quiet part out loud at a volume that made your ears ring. Then there were episodes that were genuinely trying to say something. Make Love, Not Warcraft, which is basically a love letter to gaming culture while simultaneously poking fun at it. Scott Tenorman Must Die, which reframed Cartman not as a bumbling idiot, but as a genuinely terrifying sociopath. Imagination Land, which was so ambitious it won an Emmy. These weren't just shock value hits, they were smart television dressed up in the clothes of chaos, and that combination was almost impossible to replicate. By the mid-2000s, South Park wasn't just a TV show anymore, it was a cultural institution. The Fish Sticks episode in 2009 is a perfect example of the show operating at full power. The joke was so simple. Do you like fish sticks? Do you like putting fish sticks in your mouth? What are you, a gay fish?
You're a rapper. Yes. An entrepreneur. Yes. And you like fish sticks. Yes. You're a gay fish. No, I am not no gay fish.
And Kanye West completely missed the point, which made the whole thing even funnier and somehow even more pointed. Kanye responded in real life exactly the way his character did in the episode, and South Park had essentially predicted his reaction before it even happened. That's a kind of cultural accuracy that's almost scary. Around the same period, the show started producing what fans called the trilogy episodes, multi-part stories with real narrative ambition. The Imagination Land trilogy ran across 3 episodes and managed to be a genuine action-adventure story, while also being a send-up of Hollywood blockbusters' government paranoia and the nature of imagination itself. This was South Park saying we can do anything, and they were right. The show felt genuinely limitless. Season 19 in 2015 was probably the artistic high watermark for the modern era. Parker and Stone introduced a serialized format for the first time, which meant episodes built on each other in a way that the show had never attempted before. The whole season was one long story about gentrification, political correctness culture, and the rise of a new kind of social pressure that was starting to reshape public life. It was sharper and more ambitious than anything they'd done in years, and the show felt like it was evolving rather than just spinning its wheels. But here's where it gets complicated. Season 20 tried to do the same thing, and it kind of fell apart. Parker and Stone have been pretty open about the fact that the 2016 US election completely derailed their plans. They'd built a whole season around a satirical presidential candidate only for reality to outpace them so dramatically that the satire stopped working. You can't parody something that's already a parody of itself. And for the first time, South Park looked like it wasn't sure what it wanted to say. There's a really interesting tension at the heart of South Park that started to become more visible around this time. The show built its entire identity on the idea that nothing is sacred and that everyone deserves to be made fun of equally, but the culture around it was changing. Audiences were getting more attuned to the difference between punching up and punching down, and some of South Park's older episodes started looking a lot less transgressive and a lot more just mean. The word gingers gets thrown around as a funny insult in the 2005 episode, and a young Ed Sheeran later said it made his school life genuinely miserable.
Episode of South Park fucking ruined my life.
Really?
Yeah, man.
Oh.
That's a real consequence for what was meant to be just a joke. The Mr. Garrison/Trump storyline that ran for several seasons is the best example of the show struggling with its own formula. Early on, it was biting, using Garrison as a stand-in for Trump, and having him actually win the presidency before ultimately regretting it was a smart satirical move. But as the seasons went on, the jokes started running on fumes. There are only so many times you can show a buffoonish president doing buffoonish things before you realize the actual news is doing a better job of covering it than your cartoon is. So, did South Park actually fall? That's the real question, isn't it? If you look at the ratings, the show is still pulling in millions of viewers. The Paramount Plus specials that Parker and Stone started producing have given them a new format to play with, and some of those have been genuinely excellent. The pandemic special in 2020 was one of the fastest and most savage responses to the COVID crisis that any piece of media produced, and it reminded everyone that when the show is firing on all cylinders, there's still nothing quite like it. But there's something different about the show's place in the culture now. In the late 90s and 2000s, South Park was the edgy thing. It's what you watched when you wanted to feel like you were getting away with something. Now the media landscape is so fragmented and so extreme in so many directions that South Park doesn't quite have that same shock value monopoly anymore. The internet basically out-South Parked South Park about 15 years ago, and the show has never fully figured out how to respond to that. The Prince Harry and Meghan Markle episode from 2023 is a good window into where the show is right now. It got huge headlines, people were furious, Meghan reportedly considered legal action, and honestly, if you watch the episode, it's fine. It's competent, it makes its point about the contradiction between seeking privacy and courting attention, but it doesn't have that extra gear that the best South Park episodes have, where you're laughing and also feeling slightly implicated in what you're laughing at. It felt more like a headline grab than a genuine satirical gut punch. Here's the thing about South Park that I think gets lost in all the debate about whether it's still good, or whether it's gone too far or not far enough. Parker and Stone never really claimed to have all the answers. The show's whole philosophy from the very beginning has been that everyone is kind of ridiculous, and pretending otherwise is the biggest joke of all. South Park at its best doesn't tell you what to think. It just holds up a mirror and lets you sit with how uncomfortable that reflection makes you feel. The rise of South Park was about two guys who genuinely did not care about consequences and built something extraordinary out of that freedom. The fall, if you want to call it that, is really just the story of what happens when the world catches up to you and the thing that made you dangerous starts to feel a little bit familiar. It doesn't make the show bad, it just makes it human. And honestly, for a cartoon about 4 kids in a mountain town, that's not the worst legacy you could end up with. South Park is still here, still making people angry, still occasionally making people think. Whether that's enough depends entirely on what you came looking for in the first place.